Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Gaming with me, Tony Mo. And the day has finally upon us. Actually, it's past. It was upon us. Destiny is finally released. It's currently available to grab on the Xbox 360, the PlayStation 3, the PlayStation 4, and the Xbox One. Whatever you choose to do, digitally or hard copy, you can grab yourself a copy of Bungie's latest and hopefully greatest creation. So the way I'm going to be doing Destiny coverage on my channel is going to be broken up into several different components. There's going to be smaller side commentaries that will focus on things like the Crucible, the PvP aspect of the game, or really individual hardcore focused discussions that I feel need to have videos of their own. Apart from that, we're going to be doing a review in progress of sorts where I essentially break down different parts of the game and my feelings on them as I play through all the way to the final hours of the main story and beyond that into the days of grinding and rerunning and all of the different difficulty modes that can be played and raids and all that crazy stuff. So to kick off the very first segment, I guess you can say, of the review in progress, I want to give you guys my first impressions. Of course, the most standard thing to do when you initially start playing a game. I managed to play about 4 to 5 hours of Destiny. Sadly, my most recent job venture, it burns about 12 to 13 hours of my day, so not as much gaming as I would have liked to got in on Destiny since launch, but I did get to spend quite a bit of time with it, and my brother was also there to sort of help pull me into some of the more chaotic fights, because he is like level 25 now. He's pretty much spent a lot of time on the game, so a lot of the footage you guys are going to be seeing, I'm going to be a bit under-leveled in a lot of these areas. And then at the same time, you'll see a lot of cases where you'll see a level 20, which is my brother, Po Joey, playing alongside me while he is greatly over-leveled. And this was one of the first things that really stood out to me in the game because I thought that it was interesting how the difficulty system inside of Destiny works. Because, of course, for me, as someone who is under-leveled, you know, perhaps playing 2 or 3 levels under the recommended level for a certain difficulty in any of the given missions or any of the given strike missions, I had a very hard time. My gear really wasn't up to snuff, and I was definitely taking a beating. However, with the help of some friends, you're definitely able to still dish out enough damage, and when working together, you can take down some really difficult bosses, you know, by using a combination of things like maybe linking grenades together, using your abilities at the right time to focus enemies, focusing enemies in general to eliminate their shields, and at the same time, my brother, who was playing a character who was level 20, was still actually finding the situations he was put in very difficult. So the damage that the enemies do manages to be very scalable. It doesn't actually scale just because he's 20, but the fact is, regardless of how high of a level you are, even lower level enemies, to a point, are still going to do a decent amount of damage, which I found to be very interesting. I think it kind of goes to show how hardcore the enemies can be. When playing on the harder difficulties, I should mention, I really, in my time in the beta and in my time with the full game, I do not plan on playing any of the missions on the normal difficulty. All of them will be played on very hard if possible, and then of course once you get to 20, you can start to unlock even harder difficulties and modifiers like heroic and legendary to add to your strike missions or your normal missions to make the game even more difficult. So it's obvious that Bungie understood there wasn't going to be an excessive amount of content in the game, and from what I'm starting to see, there's a good amount of content, but it's not really that same MMO level of content that I think a lot of people are expecting. The zones aren't that big. Do these things disappoint me? They do. I mean, they disappointed me in the beta, and now that the final release is here, I can openly say, okay, there isn't really anything more. They weren't trying to surprise us, and I think if they would have came out earlier and said more straightforward the size of the world, rather than that infamous quote from E3, hey, look at that mountain over there, you can walk there, which is what every developer in the history of modern gaming seems to do. And in this case, though, it wasn't true. You can't actually just walk over there. You're in very defined areas. Now, do I have a problem with that? No, because I still find each of these zones to be very well designed. They're very interesting. I wish you didn't have to revisit them as much. For example, when you're on the moon, or when you're even in the Cosmodrome on Earth in Russia, old Russia, you spend a lot of time going through the same area multiple times for, you know, multiple story missions. So you'll start off one story mission, you'll go do that story, you'll run through, and then you'll come back later and you'll push even deeper into that same area. And it requires a lot of repetition going over and over. And I think the strong point that kind of makes all of that okay, that I don't mind it, is that the combat is always enjoyable. It's always difficult. It always keeps you on your toes. So that sort of starts to fade away those concerns. However, I am disappointed because I feel like it is a lazy decision. And sadly, when you are exploring all of these different places, such as Mars and Venus, and Earth, we still have those really, really boring, like, missions or just tiny quests that you can grab. And I can't believe how unbelievably stupid and simple they actually are. They feel like the absolute laziest piece of game design I've seen in quite some time. I think those things, you know, they can fly in like a modern day MMO because everyone expects that formula. But for Bungie to deliver something like that and what is supposed to be like their greatest achievement since Halo, you know, their next greatest game, I'm not saying that they're claiming that, but that's what they're going for. And something that is supposed to span the length of 10 years, I found those side missions, the story quests, to be very, very disappointing. And a huge, just, like a punch in the face for me. I just can't believe how simplistic and how daft they actually are. So I'm a bit upset with that. Now, when it comes to exploration in each of the zones, this is one of the other things that I recognized sort of immediately because I wanted to do a lot more exploring than I actually did. The issue being is, as I started to explore, I wasn't being rewarded really for going to a lot of the new areas. Now, each of the zones, including each of the planets, I should say, and the zones that contain them, contain 5 golden chests. When you grab these 5 golden chests, you get special pieces of gear from each of them, and by capturing the 5th one, you get an extra special item. For example, if you're on Earth, the very first place you collect all 5, you actually get an upgraded speeder bike that comes in a variety of different colors. So those are great. They do give you somewhat of a reason to sort of explore and look, but that there's nothing beyond that in terms of exploration. That's all you're looking for is chests. Once in a while, you might run into like a rare boss in like a low-level zone that you have to come back and fight, but that's about it in terms of exploration. There's really nothing else going on. And for me, that's kind of upsetting because when they originally announced Destiny, I was looking at it like, oh, you know, I'll be able to go out and like actually explore and discover things, and that's not really the case. And I can't say that they did actually market it really heavily that way, but again, I think the theme for me in Destiny so far, in terms of what do I feel is a really large negative for the game in the early stages of play for me, it is that I expected so much more because they made it seem like there was going to be so much more. So I know for a lot of people, I think that's going to be a really, really hardcore topic. People don't like to be sort of betrayed in some way, and a lot of people will really take it as you backstabbing them, and they're going to look at that and they're going to be very frustrated. And again, it has a lot to do with building up the hype only to have less than that. And my brother and I were talking about this, and we both said, you know, had they been more direct about the size of the zones you were going to be in and about how much of the world you'd actually be able to explore right now in this version of Destiny, you know, who knows what will happen when we move into Destiny 2 or Destiny 3. We know that there's going to be 10 years of this game, but I don't care about that. I want to know right now. Had they been, again, more open and more direct about that, I probably wouldn't be so concerned with it. I would be, okay, yes, I'm enjoying what exists. But, as I said, I'm enjoying what I exist. It is still a very, very well-designed game. The combat, just like I talked about and raved about in the beta, is still great to me. There's that really big focus on critical or precision shots, whether it be headshots or shooting enemies that have weak points on their body, such as their stomach or their head. I find those they just add their nice layer to the combat. They make the combat consistently interesting and consistently difficult at the same time. Not to mention the strike missions, of which I've played 2 of so far, the one located on the moon and the one located on Earth. I absolutely love the strike missions. They're really fun to replay over and over. The difficulty can be a bit hardcore if you're not careful when you actually decide to do these strike missions and what difficulty, of course, you decide to do them on. But I think that's what makes it so fun, and so it keeps that level of replayability, knowing that I can go back and, you know, be challenged every single time, no matter what difficulty level I am. Now, the other side of things that you'll notice instantly in Destiny, of course, is the loot, the gear, all of the things you'll be unlocking by playing the game, whether it be in PvE or PvP, or all of the, you know, crazy side missions, the sort of reputation points you'll earn, like Vanguard points to actually purchase Vanguard gear. That is obviously a big appeal in Destiny, is going through the game and doing whatever you need to do, dailies and weeklies, to get the credits required, the reputation required, to unlock all the really freaking cool gear in Destiny. That is definitely one of the big strong points of the game, and I've mentioned this before, I don't mind a game that has a really strong focus around loot acquisition and gear acquisition, like Borderlands 2, as long as it's paired with a really interesting, entertaining, and well-designed gameplay mechanics, or set of gameplay mechanics. Borderlands 2 definitely had that for me, and Destiny manages to have that as well. And the fact that I can play with friends really does make it enjoyable. One thing I did find sort of strange was how most of the missions, actually almost all of the missions inside of Destiny, are limited to 3 players. I get that this was a design choice, but the fact that I have usually around 4 friends to play kind of always leaves that one odd man out. And you can in fact have 6 people in your fire team when exploring in an open setting when you're just doing exploring. So I felt like it was weird. I don't know how important the 3-player perspective was for their story mission design. It obviously must have been pretty important because, as I said, we really don't see any more than that. And then, of course, you have things like raids, which will come down the road, which require 6 friends to actually be playing. So I felt like the amount of players that could participate in any given activity was sort of all over the place, and I found kind of confusing. But at the same time, Destiny is a really great game to have one group of friends in a, playing in their own fire team while another group is playing in their fire team. Everyone's in a party just having a good time, chatting about their discoveries and what awesome moments they just had. Now, the other appeal of Destiny, of course, is the PvP, or the Crucible, which I haven't got to spend that much time with it. However, you guys do know I spoke pretty strongly about it in my beta impressions of the game. So that's what I'm going to be talking about in the next part of this review in progress. We're going to be taking a little bit of a more in-depth look at the PvP, what modes you can actually play, and of course what sorts of things you can unlock, what rewards there are, and what kind of satisfaction you'll actually receive for participating in the player versus player action that Destiny has to offer. Now, Destiny is still a very, very big game. My brother has spent about 25 to 30 hours into it, and he did actually just reach the final story. He has spent a lot of time running strike missions and doing lots of other activities, so I have a pretty good gauge for how long the game is. So you guys can expect to see much, much more Destiny content here on the channel. Again, taking a deeper look at all of these different elements, looking at the different planets, discussing my feelings on the game as I continue to play through it and start to get a better understanding for what Destiny actually is as it currently exists. If you guys have any questions about Destiny or the time that I've spent playing with it or anything that you've seen here in this video, and if you'd like to share your own thoughts on Destiny as you've been playing it, feel free to let me know in the comment section below, and I'll see you in the next one.